I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I was standing at Portland International Airport security at 6:15 in the morning when two TSA officers walked straight toward me. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," one of them said, his hand already reaching for my carry-on bag. My son Benjamin had just reported his own mother to airport security as a terrorist threat, and that was only the beginning of what he'd planned to destroy me. But what Benjamin didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I had something my mother left me, something that would change everything. And by the end of this story, my son would learn the hardest lesson of his life. Before we go any further, let me tell you why I was at that airport in the first place, and why my own child wanted to make sure I never made it to Montana. My name is Sarah Fletcher. I'm 56 years old, a retired elementary school teacher from Portland, Oregon. 3 weeks ago, my mother, Martha Fletcher, died suddenly of a heart attack in her sleep. She was 82 years old. That morning, October 15th, 2024, I was supposed to board a 7 a.m. flight to Billings, Montana. There was a probate hearing scheduled for 10 o'clock a.m. sharp at the Park County Courthouse. My mother's attorney, Philip Garrett, had been very clear. "Sarah, you need to be there in person. No exceptions." I'd done the math 100 times. Wheels up at 7, land at 9:15, 45-minute drive to the courthouse. Tight but possible. That's why I was at airport security at 6:15 a.m., placing my worn leather carry-on bag on the conveyor belt. Inside that bag were my mother's letters, 30 years of correspondence carefully organized in chronological order, her medical records, her personal journals, everything I needed to prove she was completely sound of mind when she made her final decision 6 months ago. The decision that cut my son Benjamin completely out of her will. I walked through the metal detector. No beep. Clean. I reached for my bag on the other side, already calculating my next moves. Gate C7. Maybe grab coffee. Review Philip's notes one more time before boarding. "Excuse me, ma'am." The voice came from my left. A TSA officer mid-30s with the kind of neutral expression that comes from years of dealing with difficult passengers. His badge read, Officer Collins. His partner, Officer Parker, stood a few feet behind him, hand resting casually near his radio. "Yes," I kept my voice even. 30 years of teaching elementary school had trained me for moments like this. Stay calm. Don't react. Let them speak first. "We need you to come with us, please." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. "Is there a problem with my bag?" "Just some routine questions, ma'am. This way." Collins gestured toward a door marked Security Office, authorized personnel only. Parker picked up my carry-on without asking. The message was clear. This wasn't optional. "Stay calm, Sarah. This is just like dealing with a parent who's convinced their child didn't start the playground fight. Don't react. Listen first." They led me down a narrow corridor with fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. The hallway smelled like industrial cleaning solution and stale coffee. We entered a small windowless room with gray walls and a metal table bolted to the floor. 3 chairs that looked like they'd been there since the Clinton administration. Collins motioned for me to sit. I did. Parker set my bag on the table and took up position by the door, not blocking it exactly, but close enough to send a message. "Ms. Fletcher," Collins began, pulling out a tablet. "We received a report about you this morning." My heart rate kicked up, but I kept my hands flat on the table. "Steady." "What kind of report, say?" Collins glanced at the screen, then back at me. His eyes were doing that thing cops do, watching for micro-expressions, tells anything that didn't match my words. "A phone call came in earlier. The caller identified himself as Benjamin Fletcher. He said he was your son." The room tilted slightly. My hands went cold. "Benjamin." "The call came in at 4:47 this morning." Collins continued, his tone professionally neutral, but his eyes never leaving my face. "The caller stated that you were traveling today to Montana. He expressed concern that you might pose a potential threat to public safety." 4:47 a.m., 2.5 hours before my flight, long enough to make sure I'd be thoroughly detained, long enough to make me miss my flight, miss the hearing, miss everything. A threat. The word came out rougher than I intended. I cleared my throat. "What kind of threat?" Parker shifted his weight by the door. "The caller claimed you'd been acting erratically since your mother's recent death. He mentioned an inheritance dispute. He said you'd made statements about doing whatever it takes to get what you believe you deserve." Those words. My exact words from our phone call yesterday. I'd said them in frustration and grief in the aftermath of losing the woman who taught me everything about strength and standing up for what's right. I'd meant I would fight legally, through proper channels, in a courtroom. Benjamin had turned them into something else entirely. Officers, I said carefully, I'm a retired elementary school teacher. I taught second grade at Roosevelt Elementary for 33 years. I've never been arrested, never been in a fight. I don't even have a speeding ticket. My mother died 3 weeks ago, and yes, there's a probate hearing in Montana this morning that I absolutely need to attend. Collins studied me. And your son, where does he fit into this? He's contesting my mother's will. So there is a dispute. A legal one, I said firmly. The kind that happens in courtrooms, not airports. My mother changed her will 6 months before she died. She left everything to me, her ranch, her land, everything she'd spent 60 years building. Benjamin was disappointed. That was putting it mildly. But I wasn't about to tell these officers about the screaming phone call about the accusations about Benjamin calling his grandmother a senile old woman 3 days after she'd changed her will. Parker spoke from his position by the door. Your son sounded genuinely concerned, Ms. Fletcher. He gave us specific details, your flight time, your destination. He knew exactly what you'd be carrying in that bag. Ice water flooded my veins. Benjamin hadn't just called to report a vague concern. He'd given them my entire itinerary. Every detail calculated to make this stop as long and thorough as possible. Every minute designed to keep me in this room while my flight boarded without me. Ms. Fletcher, Collins said, and something in his voice had shifted just slightly, but enough that I noticed. You understand why we have to take this seriously. A family member calls us, says his mother might be dangerous, gives us specific travel information. We can't just ignore that. I understand, I said. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. You're doing your job. What I didn't say, and my son knew exactly what job you'd do. He knew exactly how long this would take. Collins glanced at his watch. It's 6:28. When does your flight board? 6:52. 24 minutes. The hearing started at 10 o'clock. If I missed this flight, there wasn't another one that would get me there in time. Benjamin's lawyer would stand up in that courtroom and argue that I didn't care enough to show up, that my mother made a mistake trusting me with her legacy, that I was exactly what Benjamin claimed, erratic, unstable, unfit to inherit anything, and I would lose everything my mother had spent 60 years building. Collins was still watching me, tablet in hand, waiting for something. An explanation, a reaction, proof that his son's concern was justified, or proof that it wasn't. Officer Collins, I said slowly, may I ask you something? Go ahead. When did you say my son called 4:47 a.m.? And how long was the call? Collins looked at his tablet. 6 minutes 42 seconds. 6 minutes and 42 seconds. Long enough to sound concerned. Long enough to provide details. Long enough to make it all sound credible. That's a very specific time frame, I said. My flight was publicly available information. Anyone could look it up online. But 4:47 a.m. is an interesting time to call. Not midnight when someone's panicking. Not 3 a.m. when they've been lying awake worried. 4:47. That's calculated. That's someone who did the math. Someone who figured out exactly when to call to maximize the delay. Parker straightened slightly. Collins's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Ms. Fletcher, are you saying your son lied? I'm saying my son told you a version of events designed to keep me here long enough to miss my flight. And if I miss my flight, I miss the probate hearing. And if I miss the hearing, I lose a $4 million estate that my mother specifically wanted me to have. That's a serious accusation. So is calling airport security at 4:47 in the morning to report your own mother as a terrorist? Collins set the tablet down. We looked at each other across that metal table. Two people trying to figure out who was telling the truth. Would you like to hear the actual recording of the call? Collins asked. I blinked. You recorded it. All TSA threat calls are recorded, for liability. He hesitated. Usually we don't play them for the subject of the report, but something about this situation feels off. I want to hear it. Collins tapped the tablet. A recording began to play. My son's voice filled that small gray room. The voice I'd heard take his first words. The voice that had called me Mama until he was 6. The voice that had once told me I was the best mom in the world. That voice was worried now, strained. carefully controlled. "This is hard for me," Benjamin said on the recording. "But I'm really concerned about my mother's behavior. She's been acting erratic since my grandmother passed away 3 weeks ago, making statements like, 'They won't get away with this, and I'll make sure justice is served.' I'm worried about what she might do." The TSA operator asked him to explain further. "She's flying to Montana today for a probate hearing. She's carrying estate documents, really important documents that my grandmother specifically wanted preserved. I'm afraid she might destroy evidence if she's confronted, if she loses her temper." "Has your mother ever been violent?" the operator asked. A pause, perfectly timed, just long enough to sound hesitant. "Not that I know of, but she's never been this angry before, this obsessed. I don't know what she's capable of when she's like this." Collins stopped the recording. Silence settled in that small gray room like snow. "Well," Parker said finally, "that sure sounds like a concerned son." I stared at the tablet screen at the timestamp, at my son's voice frozen mid-manipulation. He practiced this. He rehearsed exactly what to say, how to sound worried without sounding hysterical, how to plant seeds of doubt without making direct accusations. "Officer Collins," I said quietly, "can you check if there were any other calls from that number earlier in the night?" Collins frowned. "Why?" "Because people telling the truth call once," I said. "People rehearsing their story hang up and try again." Parker raised an eyebrow. Collins looked at me for a long moment, then typed something into his tablet. His expression changed. "There were 2 earlier calls," he said slowly. "Same number, both disconnected." "What time?" "First one at 2:30 a.m., 4 seconds. Second at 3:15 a.m., 11 seconds. He looked up at me. "The successful call came through at 4:47. "He practiced twice," Parker muttered. "Son of a—" "Check my background," I said. "Please, run whatever you need to run. I'll wait." Collins typed rapidly. I sat with my hands folded on the table, watching the clock. 6:35 a.m., 17 minutes until boarding. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. Whatever it was could wait until after I cleared this nightmare. "Ms. Fletcher," Collins said, looking up from his tablet. "You're completely clean. No arrests, no complaints, no red flags anywhere in the system. 33 years teaching at Roosevelt Elementary. Retired in 2022 with full benefits and a commendation from the school board. Can you verify the hearing?" I asked. "The probate hearing in Park County." Collins made a phone call. I heard him speaking to someone then. "Yes, ma'am, Sarah Fletcher. Probate hearing for the estate of Martha Fletcher." "Yes, 10 o'clock a.m. Thank you." He ended the call and looked at me. The clerk confirmed. "Sarah Fletcher probate hearing at 10 a.m. before Judge Merrick. You're listed as the primary beneficiary of the estate." Parker stepped away from the door. "This looks like deliberate interference with a legal proceeding." "That's exactly what it is," I said. Collins closed the report on his tablet. "Ms. Fletcher, I'm marking this report as unfounded. Here's your incident number." He wrote it on a card and slid it across the table. "You may need it for your attorney." "Thank you." Parker picked up my bag and handed it to me. "For what it's worth, ma'am, I've seen this before. Family members weaponizing the system against each other, usually over money. I'm sorry you're dealing with it." I stood legs shaky with adrenaline and relief. "Can I still make my flight?" Collins checked his watch. "If you run, maybe. Gate C7. Security will call ahead and tell them you're coming." I grabbed my bag. At the door, Collins added quietly, "Your son's call was very convincing, Ms. Fletcher. That kind of manipulation. That takes planning. Be careful." "I know," I said. "I know better than anyone." I ran. My sensible flat slapped against the terminal floor. I dodged travelers pulling suitcases, families with strollers, businessmen staring at their phones. My carry-on bag banged against my hip. My breath came in gasps. I'm 56 years old. I shouldn't be sprinting through an airport at 6:40 in the morning. But I was. Because my son had tried to stop me, and I'd be damned if I let him succeed. Gate C7 appeared ahead. A small crowd still lingered near the boarding area. The gate agent was making an announcement. "Final boarding call for Flight 1823 to Billings, Montana. This is the final boarding call." "Wait," I called out, waving my boarding pass. I'm here. The gate agent, a woman about my age with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, looked up. "Miss Fletcher." "Yes." "Security called ahead. We held the plane for you." She scanned my boarding pass. "Cutting it close." "You have no idea," I gasped. "Well, you're on now. Have a good flight, honey." I stumbled down the jetway, lungs burning. The flight attendant was waiting at the aircraft door. "Miss Fletcher, welcome aboard. You're in 18C. I found my seat, collapsed into it, and clicked the seat belt with shaking hands. The woman in the window seat, mid-40s, reading a paperback thriller, glanced over. "You okay?" "Long morning," I managed. "I hear that." She went back to her book. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. The plane's engines rumbled to life. We pushed back from the gate. I'd made it. Despite everything Benjamin had planned, despite the TSA interview, despite every obstacle he'd tried to put in my way, I'd made it. For 90 seconds, relief washed over me like warm water. Then my phone buzzed. One last notification before airplane mode locked everything down. An email. The preview showed on my lock screen. From Philip Garrett. Subject urgent. Hearing moved. My hands went cold. I opened the email. Sarah, emergency motion filed by Benjamin's attorney this morning. Hearing moved to 9 a.m. Judge Merrick granted it based on scheduling conflict claimed by opposing counsel. I'm fighting it, but no guarantees. You'll need to get there even faster. Land at 9:15, hearing at 9 o'clock, you'll be late. I'll do what I can to stall. Philip, the timestamp read 6:51 a.m. 1 minute before boarding closed. I stared at that email as the plane taxied toward the runway. Benjamin hadn't just tried to stop me at security. He'd planned for failure. He'd built a backup trap in case I somehow made it onto the plane. The TSA report was Plan A. Moving the hearing time was Plan B. And I was sitting in a metal tube at 30,000 feet with absolutely no way to do anything about it. The flight attendant's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared for takeoff. Flight attendants prepare for departure." The engines wound up. We accelerated down the runway. The nose lifted. Portland disappeared beneath us. I was going to be late for my own mother's probate hearing, and my son was going to win. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Around me, passengers pulled out laptops, settled into books, adjusted their neck pillows for the 2-hour flight to Billings. Normal people doing normal things on a normal Tuesday morning. I opened my carry-on and pulled out my mother's journal, the leather-bound book she'd kept on her desk for 40 years, writing in it every Sunday evening after church. I'd read it a dozen times since she died, but now I needed her words, needed to remember why I was fighting this fight. I opened to a random page. March 15th, 2024, 6 months before she died, 7 months before this nightmare began. Sarah came up to the ranch today. Didn't call ahead, just showed up at 6 a.m. with her toolbox and a thermos of coffee. The fence in the north pasture needed repair. I'd been putting it off because my arthritis has been acting up. We worked side by side for 3 hours. Didn't need many words, just the sound of hammers and wire cutters and the wind through the Montana grass. That's how I know she's my daughter. We don't need to fill silence with chatter. We just need to work together. Benjamin used to be like that when he was small. Before he moved to Seattle and got so busy with his career. Before he started measuring everything in dollars and status. I called him yesterday to tell him I was thinking about changing my will. Wanted to be honest with him. Give him a chance to understand. He laughed. Actually laughed. Said, "Grandma, you're 82. Who are you going to leave it to the cattle?" I didn't answer. Just said I loved him and hoped he'd think about what really matters. He said he'd call me back. That was 3 days ago. No call yet. I closed the journal. Outside my window, clouds stretched endlessly white and pristine and completely indifferent to the mess of human relationships below. My phone buzzed again, one last gasp, before the plane's altitude fully blocked the signal. A text message from Benjamin. "I know what you did at security. You manipulated them. I was just trying to protect you, Mom. Have a safe flight." I read it twice. The gaslighting was masterful. I was just trying to protect you. As if calling TSA at 4:47 a.m., practicing his story twice before getting it right, timing everything perfectly to make me miss my flight, as if that was protection. "You manipulated them," he wrote, as if I was the one who'd lied. 3 dots appeared on the screen. He was typing something else. Then the signal died completely. Airplane mode took over. Whatever Benjamin wanted to say would have to wait. I put my phone away and pulled out Philip's file, the legal summary of the case. Everything I needed to know about the hearing, the will, the estate. Estate of Martha Fletcher, deceased, valued at $4.2 million land property assets. Original will 2018 50% to daughter Sarah Fletcher, 50% to grandson Benjamin Fletcher. Amended will April 15, 2024, 100% to daughter Sarah Fletcher. There it was, the source of all this pain. My mother had changed her will 6 months before she died, cutting Benjamin out entirely. Philip's notes continued. Grounds for contest filed by Benjamin Fletcher, 1. Testator lacked mental capacity, 2. Undue influence by Sarah Fletcher, 3. Suspicious timing of will change, 4. Improper execution of documents. I knew these accusations weren't true. I'd never pressured my mother about her will. I hadn't even known she'd changed it until after she died when Philip called me with the news. But Benjamin was betting that his accusations would sound credible, that a judge would look at a grandmother who changed her will at age 81 and wonder if something was wrong. That's why I had the journals. That's why I had the letters, the medical records, the documentation proving my mother was completely sound of mind. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. Folks, we've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Should be smooth sailing from here to Billings. We'll have you on the ground right on schedule at 9:15 a.m. Mountain Time. 9:15. 15 minutes after the hearing started. I looked at the file in my lap. Philip's last note, written in his careful handwriting, Sarah, the penalty clause in your mother's will states that if Benjamin contests it without just cause, he must pay all legal fees for both sides. Current estimate $45,000. He doesn't know this yet. My mother had been thorough. Even in death, she was protecting me, teaching Benjamin a lesson about consequences. But only if I got to that courthouse. Only if I could present my case. I opened my mother's journal again, this time to the very last entry. 3 days before she died. January 12, 2025. I'm sitting at my desk looking out at the ranch in winter. Snow on the mountains. Sky so blue it hurts to look at. Sarah called this morning just to chat. Told me about her neighbor's new puppy. Made me laugh with a story about a kid in her class who tried to convince her that his dog ate his homework, and when she called the parents, it turned out the dog actually had eaten it. We talked for an hour about nothing and everything, the way mothers and daughters do when they love each other. Benjamin hasn't called in 6 weeks. Christmas came and went. He sent a card, one of those generic ones that says Happy Holidays with no personal message. I'm not angry with him anymore, just sad. Sad that he doesn't understand that time is the only currency that matters, that you can't get it back once it's gone. If I die tomorrow, I'll die knowing I made the right choice. Sarah earned this ranch, not because she asked for it, but because she showed up, month after month, year after year, just to be with me. That's what inheritance really means, not money or land, but the transfer of love and attention across generations. Benjamin will be angry when he finds out. I accept that. But maybe if I'm very lucky, he'll learn something from losing what he never appreciated in the first place. I closed the journal, tears streaming down my face. The woman in the window seat pretended not to notice. My mother had known exactly what she was doing. She hadn't cut Benjamin out to punish him. She'd done it to save him. To teach him that some things can't be bought or manipulated or schemed into existence. Some things have to be earned. The question was, would I get the chance to tell him? The plane touched down in Billings at exactly 9:17 a.m., 2 minutes late. I was already unbuckled, bag in hand, positioned at the front of the economy cabin before the seatbelt sign even dinged off. The flight attendant gave me a knowing look but didn't stop me. Good luck with whatever you're rushing to, she said quietly. Thank you. I'll need it. The moment that cabin door opened, I ran. Again. My second sprint of the day, and it wasn't even 10 o'clock yet. Billings Logan International Airport is small compared to Portland. I made it from the gate to the rental car counter in 4 minutes flat. The agent, a young man with kind eyes and a Montana drawl, took one look at my face and started typing faster. Courthouse, he asked. How did you know, lady, I've worked here 6 years? I know that look. You're either headed to court or the hospital and you don't look injured. He slid keys across the counter. Bay 14. Silver Tahoe. Drive safe. Thank you. I found the Tahoe, threw my bag in the back, and punched the courthouse address into my phone's GPS. 43 minutes away under normal conditions. I had negative 13 minutes. The Montana landscape blurred past my windows. Big sky country, just like my mother always said. Brown grass stretching to distant mountains, endless blue overhead. Beautiful and indifferent to the small human drama playing out in a courthouse downtown. My phone rang. Philip. Sarah, where are you? 20 minutes out, maybe 15 if I speed. The hearing started at 9 o'clock. Judge Merrick is not happy. Benjamin's attorney Conrad Mitchell is arguing that your absence proves you're not fit to manage the estate, that you're unstable, unreliable. My knuckles went white on the steering wheel. I was detained at airport security because Benjamin filed a false report. I have the incident number. Silence on the line. Then, he did what called TSA at 4:47 this morning, claimed I was a terrorist threat. They held me in a security office for 40 minutes. Jesus, Sarah, that's witness tampering. That's obstruction of justice. I know what it is. Can you stall? I'm trying, but Judge Merrick wants to know where you are. He's giving you until 9:45. If you're not here by then, he's ruling on the motion to dismiss. I looked at the GPS, 9:32 a.m., 13 minutes. I'll be there, I said and hung up. I pulled into the courthouse parking lot at 9:44 a.m. 1 minute to spare. The Park County Courthouse was an old brick building with white columns and an American flag snapping in the Montana wind. I'd been here once before years ago when my mother had to file some property paperwork. She'd held my hand on these same steps and told me, Sarah, this building represents something important. Justice, fairness, truth. Remember that. I ran up those steps now carrying her journals and letters and medical records. Carrying the truth. Inside, a security guard checked my bag. The metal detector beeped my house keys. He waved me through. A clerk directed me to courtroom B, second floor. I took the stairs 2 at a time. My sensible flats echoed on the marble. The courtroom doors were heavy oak with brass handles. I pulled one open as quietly as I could and slipped inside. Every head turned. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Dark wood paneling, high ceilings, tall windows letting in Montana sunlight. Maybe 30 people in the gallery, mostly local ranchers who'd known my mother, plus a few courthouse regulars who showed up for anything interesting. At the front, Judge Merrick sat behind the bench in black robes. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of face that had seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. Philip Garrett sat at the petitioner's table on the left, looking relieved. Across the aisle at the respondent's table sat my son Benjamin and his attorney Conrad Mitchell. Benjamin's back was to me, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He wore an expensive charcoal suit, probably cost more than my monthly pension. His dark hair was perfectly styled. Everything about him screamed successful Seattle businessman. Everything except the fact that he'd just tried to sabotage his own mother. Ms. Fletcher, Judge Merrick said, his voice filling the courtroom. How good of you to join us. Your Honor, I apologize for my tardiness. I was detained by... Save it for testimony, Ms. Fletcher. Take your seat. I walked down the center aisle. Benjamin turned slightly. Our eyes met for half a second. His expression was carefully blank, but I saw something flicker there. Surprise, fear, maybe both. I sat beside Philip at the petitioner's table. He slid a yellow legal pad toward me with a note scrawled on top. Don't say anything yet. Let me handle it. Judge Merrick consulted his notes. Now that we're all finally present, let's begin. This is the matter of the estate of Martha Fletcher, deceased. We're here on an emergency motion filed by Mr. Benjamin Fletcher to contest the validity of his grandmother's last will and testament. Mr. Mitchell, you may proceed. Conrad Mitchell stood. He was everything you'd expect from a $500 an hour Seattle attorney. Mid-40s tailored suit, presidential haircut, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. My client, Benjamin Fletcher, has filed this contest on 4 grounds. He clicked a remote. A screen behind him lit up with bullet points. Grounds for contesting the will, mental incapacity of the testator, undue influence by beneficiary, suspicious timing, improper execution. Your Honor, Conrad continued, the evidence will show that Martha Fletcher, while a remarkable woman, suffered from significant cognitive decline in her final months. She was 82 years old on multiple medications and increasingly isolated from her family, except for her daughter Sarah, who visited frequently and had unprecedented access. I felt my jaw clench. Philip touched my arm lightly. Stay calm. The timing of the will change is deeply suspicious. Conrad went on. 6 months before Mrs. Fletcher's death, she suddenly and dramatically altered her estate plan, disinheriting her grandson completely. This decision was made at an advanced age during a period of documented health decline, and we believe under the improper influence of the primary beneficiary. He gestured toward me as if I were a criminal in a lineup. We ask the court to invalidate the amended will and revert to the previous version, which fairly distributed the estate between Mrs. Fletcher's daughter and grandson. Thank you, Your Honor. Conrad sat down. Benjamin leaned over and whispered something to him. Conrad nodded. Judge Merrick turned to Philip. Mr. Garrett, Philip stood buttoning his jacket. He'd been practicing law in Montana for 40 years, longer than Conrad Mitchell had been alive. He moved with the confidence of someone who knew this courthouse, this judge, and how to win in both. Your Honor, I represented Martha Fletcher for 35 years. I knew her when I was fresh out of law school, and she was building her ranch with her own 2 hands after her husband passed away. I can state with absolute certainty that Martha Fletcher was mentally sound until her final day. Philip walked to our table and picked up my mother's journals, 3 leather-bound books with ribbon bookmarks. But I don't need to rely solely on my testimony. Martha left us something better. She left us her own words. Conrad shot to his feet. Your Honor, that's hearsay. Exception under Federal Rules of Evidence 8033, Philip said smoothly. Recorded recollection and state of mind. Additionally, these journals establish the deceased's mental state at the time the will was executed, which is directly relevant to testamentary capacity. Judge Merrick leaned back in his chair. I'll allow it. These are contemporaneous records kept by the deceased over 40 years. They're clearly probative. Objection overruled. A murmur ran through the gallery. I saw some of the local ranchers nodding. Everyone in Montana knew Martha kept journals. It was part of who she was. Sunday evenings after church, she'd sit at her desk and write. Every week, for decades. Benjamin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Philip held up the journals. Your Honor, I'm going to read selected passages from Martha Fletcher's final year. They tell a story about a woman who watched her grandson drift away and made a painful but necessary decision about her legacy. Philip opened the first journal pages marked with sticky notes. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Even the clerk stopped typing. March 15th, 2024. Philip read, his voice carrying clearly in the stillness. 6 months before Martha's death. Sarah came up to the ranch today, helped me fix the fence in the north pasture. I didn't ask her to, she just showed up at 6 a.m. with tools and coffee. We worked in comfortable silence. That's how I know she's my daughter. We don't need words to understand each other. Benjamin used to be like that when he was small. I don't know where that little boy went. Philip turned a page. July 3rd, 2024. Benjamin's birthday. 3 months before Martha's death. Called Benjamin this morning to wish him happy birthday. He's 32 years old today. Got voicemail. Called back at noon. Again at 7 p.m. Finally got a text at 9 p.m. Sorry, Grandma, super busy with work. Work. Always work. Sarah tells me not to take it personally that Benjamin is building a career. But when you're 81, you start counting how many birthdays you have left, and you notice who shows up and who doesn't. Several people in the gallery shifted. A few nodded. They'd known my mother. They remembered her talking about this over coffee after church at the feed store at community gatherings. Philip flipped to another marked page. His voice dropped slightly, becoming more serious. December 26, 2023, the day after Christmas, 9 months before Martha's death. Benjamin went rigid in his chair. I could see his hands gripping the armrests. Benjamin left this morning. Came up for Christmas Day, gone by the 26th. Didn't even finish his coffee. Said he wanted to beat the traffic. We sat at the kitchen table maybe 20 minutes before he said, Grandma, I need to talk to you about something important. He had an investment opportunity. Can't lose, he said, but he needed $50,000 to get in on the ground floor. I asked what kind of investment. He said it was complicated technical. I asked who else was involved. He said it was insider information he'd have to explain later. I've run a business for 60 years. I know what those words mean. They mean it's a bad idea, and he knows it. I said no. I said, Benjamin, if you need money because you're in trouble, tell me the truth. We'll work through it together, but I'm not funding some mystery investment scheme. He said, Grandma, you're sitting on millions of dollars of land. What are you going to do with it? You're going to die soon anyway. The courtroom went absolutely still. A woman in the gallery gasped quietly. Judge Merrick removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Philip continued reading, his voice steady but weighted with emotion. That was the moment I knew. That exact moment. My grandson didn't see me as a person anymore. He saw me as a bank account with a heartbeat. He was just waiting for me to die so he could cash out. I told him to leave. He left, didn't even say goodbye properly. Philip looked up from the journal. Benjamin's face had gone white. His attorney whispered something to him urgently. "Your Honor," Philip said quietly, "this is why Martha changed her will. Not because she was confused, not because anyone influenced her, but because her own grandson told her to her face that she was going to die soon anyway, so why not give him the money now?" He turned another page. The next entry, December 27th, 2023, the day Martha decided to change her will. "I'm going to change my will tomorrow. I don't want to, but I have to. If I give this ranch to Benjamin, he'll sell it before my body is cold. He'll burn through the money in 5 years and have nothing left. No lessons learned. No character built. Just zero. Sarah will understand. Sarah always understood me." Philip closed that journal and opened the second one. April 15th, 2024, the day Martha executed the new will. Went to Philip's office today. Changed the will. Hardest thing I've done since burying my husband Frank back in 1978. Benjamin will hate me for this. Maybe forever. I accept that. Because I'm doing this out of love. Strange kind of love maybe, but love nonetheless. If I give him $4 million right now, he'll destroy himself with it. He'll never learn, never grow, never become the man he's capable of being. But if Sarah gets it, I know what will happen. Sarah will give Benjamin away back. That's who my daughter is. She never gives up on anyone, even when they've given up on themselves. My throat tightened. Tears blurred my vision. I'd read these entries before alone in my apartment, but hearing them read aloud in a courtroom, hearing my mother's voice through Philip's words, it broke something open inside me. Philip turned to the final marked page. April 18th, 2024, 3 days after the will was changed, 5 months before Martha died. Benjamin called this afternoon. He knows. Someone told him I changed the will. Probably Sharon at Philip's office. She never could keep her mouth shut. He called me a senile old woman. Said I was being manipulated by Sarah. Said everyone knows Sarah poisoned me against him. I told him, "Benjamin, your mother never said a bad word about you. Not one. You did this to yourself. Every time you chose money over family. Every time you asked me what I was worth instead of how I was doing." He screamed into the phone. Said I would regret this. Said I would die knowing I destroyed this family. I said, "I'll die knowing I tried to save you from yourself." That's enough. He hung up. I don't think I'll hear from him again. Philip set the journal down gently on the table. The silence in the courtroom was profound. Judge Merrick looked at Benjamin for a long moment. "Mr. Fletcher, did you or did you not threaten your grandmother 3 days after she changed her will?" Benjamin's voice was barely audible. I was angry. I didn't mean, did you tell your grandmother that she would die knowing she destroyed the family?" Silence. "Answer the question, Mr. Fletcher." "Yes," Benjamin whispered. But I was upset. I wasn't thinking clearly. "And yet," Judge Merrick said, his voice cold as Montana winter, "your grandmother died 5 months later of a sudden heart attack, and now you're in my courtroom trying to overturn the very will you threatened her about." Conrad Mitchell stood quickly trying to salvage the situation. "Your Honor, my client's emotional reaction to family conflict doesn't invalidate the grounds for our contest. We still maintain that Martha Fletcher lacked testamentary capacity, and," Counselor Judge Merrick interrupted, "I've heard enough for now. We're going to take a 15-minute recess. When we come back, I want to hear from Ms. Sarah Fletcher directly." He banged the gavel once. 15 minutes. Everyone stood as the judge left the bench. The moment he was gone, the courtroom erupted in whispers. The local ranchers were shaking their heads. One older woman was crying openly. Benjamin turned and looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in years, I saw past the expensive suit and the Seattle polish to the boy who used to help his grandmother feed chickens. The boy who'd once told me I was the best mom in the world. That boy looked terrified. Philip leaned over. "Sarah, this is going better than I hoped. The journals are devastating. But we need to address the airport incident. Can you prove what happened?" I pulled out the card Officer Collins had given me. TSA incident number They recorded Benjamin's call, including the 2 practice attempts he made at 2:30 and 3:15 this morning. Philip's eyes widened. He practiced twice before getting it right at 4:47. Jesus, Philip took the card. This changes everything. That's not just a concerned son. That's premeditated obstruction. Conrad Mitchell approached our table, his professional smile firmly in place. Philip, can we talk settlement? My client is willing to accept 20% of the estate, and your client is going to end up paying $45,000 in legal fees, Philip said calmly. There's a penalty clause in the will. If Benjamin contests without just cause and loses, he pays all costs for both sides. You did read the will, didn't you, Conrad? Conrad's smile faltered. I will need to review. You didn't read it. Philip shook his head. Go back to your client. Tell him what he's actually facing. Then we'll talk. Conrad retreated. I watched him lean down to whisper urgently in Benjamin's ear. Benjamin's face went from white to gray. Amanda, Benjamin's wife, was sitting in the gallery 3 rows back. I hadn't noticed her earlier. She was small, blonde, pretty in that polished way that comes from expensive salons and designer clothes. 8 months pregnant, her hands resting on her swollen belly. Our eyes met. She looked away quickly, but not before I saw the tears. She knew. She'd known what Benjamin was planning. The 15 minutes passed in a blur of whispered consultations. Philip reviewed my testimony notes. I tried to steady my breathing, calm my racing heart. Judge Merrick returned. We all stood. Be seated, he said. Ms. Fletcher, please take the witness stand. I walked to the witness box on shaky legs. The clerk approached with a Bible. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. I sat. The witness box faced the entire courtroom, the judge, the attorneys, the gallery, and Benjamin sitting at that defense table, unable to look at me. Philip stood. Ms. Fletcher, can you tell the court about your relationship with your mother, Martha Fletcher? I took a breath, found my voice. My mother was the strongest woman I ever knew. Tell us about her, Philip said gently. I looked out at the courtroom at the faces watching me. Local ranchers who'd known my mother, the clerk, the judge who'd known her for 30 years. My mother built Fletcher Ranch with her own 2 hands, I began. Her husband, my father, died in 1978 when I was 10 years old. Construction accident. One day he was there, the next he was gone. He left her with 500 acres of Montana land, a small herd of cattle, and a daughter to raise alone. My voice steadied as I talked. This was my mother's story. She deserved to have it told right. Everyone said she should sell. A woman alone couldn't run a ranch, they said. She'd go broke in a year. But my mother wasn't interested in what everyone said. She was interested in survival, in building something that would last. I looked at Benjamin. He was staring at the table. She taught me how to work. Really work. Not the kind of work you do for a paycheck, but the kind you do because something depends on you. The cattle needed feeding every morning, no matter how cold it was. The fences needed mending, no matter how tired you were. The land needed care, no matter what else was happening in your life. How often did you visit your mother at the ranch? Philip asked. Once a month for the last 15 years. After I retired from teaching in 2022, sometimes twice a month. I'd drive up from Portland 6 hours each way just to spend a weekend with her. And Benjamin? How often did he visit? Conrad started to object, but Judge Merrick waved him down. I'll allow it. I chose my words carefully. Benjamin visited for holidays when he was younger, Thanksgiving, Christmas. But as he got older, the visits became less frequent. The last few years, maybe twice a year. Sometimes just Christmas. Did you ever discuss the will with your mother? Never. I didn't know she'd changed it until after she died. Philip called me 2 days after the funeral and told me. I was shocked. This was true. I'd expected the old will, the one that split everything between me and Benjamin. When Philip told me my mother had left everything to me, my first reaction had been confusion, then worry. I'd known Benjamin would be devastated, angry, possibly vengeful. I just hadn't known how vengeful. Ms. Fletcher, Philip said, can you tell the court about this morning, about why you arrived late to this hearing? I pulled out the TSA incident card. At 6:17 this morning, I was detained by airport security at Portland International Airport. 2 TSA officers took me to a security office for questioning. They told me someone had called in a report claiming I was a potential threat. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Who made that call? My son, Benjamin Fletcher. Conrad jumped up. Your Honor, there's no proof that there's a recording, I said calmly. TSA records all threat calls. The call came in at 4:47 a.m. Before that, there were 2 disconnected calls from the same number at 2:30 and 3:15 a.m. My son practiced what he was going to say before he made the actual report. The courtroom erupted. Judge Merrick banged his gavel. Order. Philip entered the TSA incident card into evidence. Your Honor, this shows premeditated interference with a legal proceeding. Mr. Benjamin Fletcher deliberately filed a false report to prevent his mother from attending this hearing. That's not true. Benjamin stood up, his voice cracking. I was worried about her. She was acting strange, talking about doing whatever it takes to win this case. I was scared she might do something dangerous. Judge Merrick's voice cut through the noise. Mr. Fletcher, sit down. Benjamin sat, but he'd said enough. Enough to confirm what everyone was thinking. Philip turned back to me. After the security detention, did you make your flight? Barely. I ran through the terminal and boarded just as they were closing the door. And then I received an email from you telling me the hearing had been moved from 10 a.m. to 9 a.m., which meant even though I'd made my flight, I would still be late. Philip introduced the email chain into evidence. Judge Merrick read it carefully, his expression darkening. So let me understand this, the judge said slowly. Your son filed a false TSA report at 4:47 in the morning, time to delay you at security. When that didn't completely stop you, his attorney filed an emergency motion to move the hearing time up by an hour, ensuring you'd arrive late even if you made your flight. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Merrick looked at Conrad Mitchell. Counselor, did you know about the TSA report when you filed your emergency motion? Conrad went pale. My client mentioned his mother might have trouble getting here, but I didn't know the specifics. Did you or did you not know that your client had filed a false police report? Your Honor, I was simply responding to my client's concerns about scheduling. Answer the question. Conrad swallowed. I knew he'd contacted authorities about concerns for his mother's mental state. I did not know the call was false. But you filed an emergency motion to move the hearing time specifically because you knew she might be delayed. Silence. Judge Merrick set the papers down. This court does not appreciate being manipulated. We will continue this hearing, but I want both parties to understand that I take obstruction of justice very seriously. He turned to me. Ms. Fletcher, you may step down. Mr. Garrett, any other witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. The estate calls Dr. Patricia Robbins, Martha Fletcher's primary physician. Dr. Robbins was a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. She wore a simple navy dress and carried a thick medical file. After being sworn in, she settled into the witness box with the calm confidence of someone who'd testified in court before. Philip began. Dr. Robbins, how long were you Martha Fletcher's physician? 17 years. She became my patient in 2007 when I opened my practice in Billings. And were you her physician at the time she executed her new will in April 2024? Yes. Can you describe her mental state during that period? Dr. Robbins opened her file. I saw Martha for a routine checkup on April 3, 2024, 12 days before she signed the new will. I performed a comprehensive examination including cognitive function tests. Martha scored perfectly on the mini mental state examination. Her memory was excellent. Her reasoning was clear. She showed no signs whatsoever of dementia confusion or impaired judgment. Philip introduced the medical records into evidence. In your professional opinion, did Martha Fletcher have the mental capacity to execute a valid will in April 2024? Absolutely. Without question. Conrad stood for cross-examination. Dr. Robbins, Mrs. Fletcher was 81 years old at the time. Surely there was some cognitive decline associated with age. Normal age-related changes, yes, but nothing that affected her decision-making capacity. Martha Fletcher had the mental acuity of someone 20 years younger. Was she on any medications that might affect her judgment? She took medication for high blood pressure and cholesterol. Neither affects cognitive function. I have her complete medication list here if you'd like to review it. Conrad waved it off. No further questions. Dr. Robbins stepped down. Philip stood again. Your Honor, the estate rests. The evidence clearly shows that Martha Fletcher had full testamentary capacity, was not under any undue influence, and made a deliberate, carefully considered decision to change her will. The journals document her reasoning. The medical records confirm her mental state. And the timeline shows that her decision was a direct response to her grandson's behavior, specifically his statement that she was going to die soon anyway. Judge Merrick turned to Conrad. Mr. Mitchell, do you wish to present your case? Conrad conferred quietly with Benjamin. I could see the panic in Benjamin's body language, the way he kept shaking his head, the way his hands gripped the edge of the table. Finally, Conrad stood. Your Honor, given the testimony we've heard today, and in light of certain new information that has come to light, my client wishes to withdraw his contest. No. The word came from Benjamin himself. He stood up, ignoring Conrad's attempt to pull him back down. No, I'm not withdrawing. This isn't fair. That ranch should be mine. Grandma promised it to me when I was 8 years old. She took me on a walk around the property line and said, "Someday, Benjamin, all of this will be yours." She promised. His voice cracked. Amanda was crying openly in the gallery now. Judge Merrick's expression was stone. Mr. Fletcher, your grandmother was telling stories to an 8-year-old boy during summer vacation. That's not a legally binding promise. And even if it were you forfeited any claim to her generosity the moment you told her she was going to die soon anyway. Sit down. Benjamin remained standing. You don't understand. I need that money. I'm drowning. I owe people bad people. If I don't pay them back, they'll... Benjamin, stop. Amanda's voice cut through the courtroom. She was standing now, one hand on her pregnant belly, the other clutching the back of the pew in front of her. Please, just stop. Judge Merrick banged his gavel. That's enough. Everyone sit down. Now. Benjamin and Amanda both sat. The courtroom fell silent. The judge removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with disappointment. I've sat on this bench for 23 years. I've handled hundreds of probate cases. Most of them are routine, carrying out the clear wishes of the deceased, distributing assets according to a valid will, ensuring the law is followed. But every few years, a case comes along that reminds me why this work matters. He looked directly at Benjamin. Martha Fletcher was my friend. I knew her for 30 years. She served on the church board. She donated to the volunteer fire department. She helped start the county's first food bank. She was the kind of person who made this community better just by being in it. The judge picked up my mother's journals. These entries paint a clear picture. A woman who worked her whole life to build something meaningful. A woman who loved her family but refused to let that love blind her to reality. A woman who made a hard choice because she believed it was the right thing to do. He set the journals down and looked at the ceiling for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Benjamin Fletcher, I'm going to tell you something your grandmother probably would have told you if she'd lived long enough. You're not entitled to anyone else's hard work, not your grandmother's, not your mother's. Nobody owes you an inheritance. An inheritance is a gift given freely by someone who chooses to give it. Your grandmother chose not to give it to you. That was her right. Benjamin's shoulders shook. He was crying now silently. The evidence before this court is overwhelming. Martha Fletcher had full testamentary capacity. The will was properly executed. There was no undue influence. The timeline is clear. She changed her will in direct response to your behavior and your words. You're going to die soon anyway. Those words, Mr. Fletcher, ended any chance you had at inheriting her estate. Judge Merrick opened a folder and began reading from prepared notes. The will dated April 15, 2024 is hereby declared valid and enforceable. The entirety of Martha Fletcher's estate, including Fletcher Ranch, all property assets and holdings, passes to her daughter Sarah Fletcher, as specified in the will. I felt tears streaming down my face, relief and grief mixing together. Furthermore, the judge continued, I note that the will contains a penalty clause in Section 7, subsection 3. The clause states, any beneficiary who contests this will without just cause shall be responsible for all legal fees incurred by all parties in the contest. Benjamin's head snapped up. Mr. Garrett, what is the current estimate of legal fees? Philip stood. Your Honor, preliminary accounting places total fees at approximately $45,000. Benjamin made a choking sound. Benjamin Fletcher, you are hereby ordered to pay $45,000 in legal fees to cover the costs of this frivolous contest. Payment is due within 90 days. Conrad Mitchell was frantically whispering to Benjamin, but Benjamin didn't seem to hear him. He was staring at the judge's mouth-open face, drained of all color. Your Honor, Conrad said, standing, my client doesn't have... That is not the court's concern, Mr. Mitchell. Your client chose to contest a valid will. Your client filed a false TSA report to interfere with these proceedings. Your client must now face the consequences of those choices. Judge Merrick banged his gavel one final time. This matter is closed. Court is adjourned. I walked out of that courthouse into bright Montana sunshine. The air was cold and clean, smelling of distant snow and pine trees. My hands were shaking. My legs felt weak. But I'd won. My mother's ranch was safe. Her legacy was protected. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd built, would continue. Philip caught up with me on the courthouse steps. Sarah, that was something. In 40 years of practicing law, I've never seen a case quite like that. Thank you, I managed, for everything. Your mother chose well when she chose you. He squeezed my shoulder. I'll file the final paperwork this week. The estate should transfer completely within 30 days. You'll need to decide what to do with the ranch. I already know what I'm going to do. He smiled. I thought you might. Call me if you need anything. Philip walked to his car. I stood on those courthouse steps looking out at the town my mother had called home for 60 years. The mountains in the distance. The endless sky. Big sky country. Behind me, I heard footsteps. I turned. Benjamin was walking toward me across the parking lot. Amanda stood by their car watching. She didn't follow him. My son stopped 10 feet away. We looked at each other, mother and son on opposite sides of a war neither of us had wanted. You turned the judge against me, Benjamin said. His voice was flat, empty. I told the truth. That ranch should be mine. Benjamin, no. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Don't try to make this okay. Grandma betrayed me. You betrayed me. Everyone betrayed me. Your grandmother loved you, I said quietly. She made this choice because she loved you. She was trying to teach you something. What, that I'm worthless, that I don't deserve anything. That some things can't be bought or inherited, they have to be earned. Benjamin laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Easy for you to say. You're about to inherit $4 million. And you're about to become a father. He froze. I gestured to Amanda standing by the car with her hand on her pregnant belly. When is she due? January. Boy or girl, girl? His voice cracked on the word. I took a step closer. Benjamin, listen to me. Right now you're about to become a father, and you're drowning in debt and resentment. You can keep going this way, keep fighting, keep scheming, keep trying to take shortcuts to success. Or you can stop. You can choose a different path. What path? I owe $45,000 I don't have. I'm ruined. No, I said. You're broken. There's a difference. Broken things can be fixed. He looked at me with eyes so full of pain I almost couldn't stand it. How? He whispered. How do I fix this? Benjamin stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. What? Come work at the ranch, I repeated. Fletcher Ranch, your grandmother's land, the land you think should be yours. Come work it. Mom, I can't. $15 an hour, I said. 40 hours a week. Room and board included at the ranch house. You'll work off the $45,000 in legal fees. At that rate, it'll take you about a year. His mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Every dollar you earn goes toward paying what you owe. When it's paid off, we'll talk about your future, about whether you've learned what your grandmother was trying to teach you. A year of manual labor. His voice rose. Mom, I'm a financial analyst. I have a degree from Washington State. I work in downtown Seattle. You can't afford not to, I said quietly. You owe $45,000. You just admitted in court that you owe money to bad people. You have a baby coming in 3 months. What's your other option, Benjamin? More schemes, more shortcuts. He looked back at Amanda. She was watching us, one hand pressed against the car window. Even from this distance, I could see her fear. What about Amanda? Benjamin asked. What about our life in Seattle? Bring her. The ranch house has 4 bedrooms, plenty of space for a family. I took a breath. But this offer comes with conditions. Non-negotiable conditions. Of course it does. Bitterness crept back into his voice. I held up one finger. First, you attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings. Every week. No exceptions. There's a chapter in Billings 30 minutes from the ranch. His face went pale. How did you... I'm your mother, Benjamin. I know when you're lying. I've known since that phone call about the investment opportunity. There's no investment. There's gambling debt. He looked away, jaw clenched. I held up a second finger. Second, you work. Really work. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 5 days a week. You'll learn everything about running that ranch. Feeding cattle, mending fences, managing the books, maintaining equipment. Everything your grandmother did for 60 years. That's indentured servitude. That's earning what you tried to take, I corrected. And it's generous. Your grandmother would have made you do it for free. Third finger. Third, honesty. Complete honesty. No more lies. No more manipulation. If you slip, if you gamble again, if you lie again, if you try any scheme to get out of this, the offer disappears. You'll owe the $45,000 immediately, and you'll never set foot on Fletcher Ranch again. Benjamin was quiet for a long moment. Behind us, the courthouse door opened and closed. People filed out, heading to their cars. The gallery observers, the local ranchers, people who'd known my mother and watched her grandson try to steal her legacy. Why? Benjamin finally asked. Why would you offer me this after everything I've done? The TSA report, the lies, all of it. Why? I thought about my mother's journal entry. Sarah will give Benjamin a way back. That's who my daughter is. Because your grandmother believed you could change, I said. And so do I. But belief isn't enough, Benjamin. You have to do the work. You have to choose to be different. He looked at Amanda again. She nodded slowly, encouraging him. 1 year, he said, and then the debt is paid. 1 year of honest work. Yes. And after that, we'll see what kind of man you've become. Benjamin stood there in that parking lot suit jacket flapping in the Montana wind, his expensive shoes dusty from the courthouse steps. He looked young suddenly, younger than 32, like the boy he'd been before Seattle, before the gambling, before he'd lost his way. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll do it. 3 days later, Benjamin's silver BMW pulled up the long dirt road to Fletcher Ranch at 5:45 a.m. I was already awake, coffee in hand, standing on the porch of the ranch house as the sun painted the Montana mountains gold and pink. The October air was sharp and cold. Winter was coming. We'd have snow within a month. Benjamin got out of his car wearing brand new work boots that still had the price tag attached, designer jeans that cost more than most people's monthly grocery bill, and a jacket that was definitely not designed for ranch work. Amanda emerged from the passenger side, moving carefully with her 8 months pregnant belly. She wore a soft blue maternity dress and looked terrified. Morning, I called from the porch. Benjamin nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. Amanda managed a small smile. Come inside. I'll show you the house, then we'll get to work. The Fletcher Ranch house was a 2-story structure my mother's husband had built in 1976, 2 years before he died. Solid wood construction, wide plank floors, high ceilings with exposed beams. It had been updated over the years, new kitchen in the 90s, new bathrooms in 2010, but it still had the bones of that original structure. Honest, sturdy, built to last. I showed them the main floor. Living room with a stone fireplace. Kitchen with a big farmhouse table. My mother's office still full of her papers and journals. Upstairs, 4 bedrooms. The master bedroom where my mother had slept for 40 years. 2 guest rooms. And a smaller room that had been mine when I was growing up, when we'd visit during summers and holidays. You and Amanda take the master bedroom, I said. It's the biggest, and you'll need space once the baby comes. Amanda touched the doorframe gently. This was Martha's room. For 60 years. I can't take her room. It doesn't feel right. I looked at this young woman, this girl really barely 30 years old, who'd married my son and was now being dragged into his mess. I didn't know her story yet. Didn't know what had led her to Benjamin, what kept her with him through all his failures. But I knew one thing she was trying, and that mattered. My mother would want a baby born in this house, I said gently. She'd want new life here. Take the room. Honor her by filling it with family. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Benjamin stood in the doorway watching us. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or shame. I'll take the smallest bedroom, I said. My old room. It's all I need. We moved their bags upstairs. Not much, they'd packed light planning to get the rest of their things from Seattle later. Then I took them downstairs and out to the barn. The barn was 100 years old, built by the original homesteader who'd claimed this land in 1924. My mother's husband had renovated it in 1975. My mother had maintained it for 60 years after he died. Now it was mine to care for, and Benjamin's to learn. Inside it smelled like hay and leather and decades of honest work. 20 cattle waited in their stalls watching us with patient brown eyes. "This is where you'll spend most of your time for the next few months," I said. "These cattle need feeding twice a day, morning and evening. They need fresh water. The stalls need mucking out daily." Benjamin looked at the cattle like they were alien creatures. I don't know how to. "I'll teach you." I handed him a pitchfork. Brand new, bought from the farm supply store in Billings 2 days ago, along with proper work clothes, boots, and gloves. The old tools, my mother's tools, hung on the wall like relics in a museum. I couldn't bear to see them used yet. Maybe someday. "Watch me first." I showed him how to muck out a stall, how to pitch fresh hay, how to check the water troughs, how to move around cattle without startling them. Basic things. Things I'd learned when I was 10 years old, standing beside my mother, learning what it meant to be responsible for living creatures. Benjamin tried. I'll give him that. He gripped the pitchfork awkwardly and stabbed at the soiled hay like he was fighting it. He slipped in the muck and nearly fell. He spooked a cow which kicked and sent him stumbling backward into a post. But he didn't quit. By 8 a.m. he'd managed to muck out 3 stalls. It should have taken 30 minutes. It took him 2.5 hours. "Better," I said. "Tomorrow you'll be faster." He looked at his hands, soft off his hands, now blistered and red despite the gloves. "This is impossible." "No, it's just hard. There's a difference." We walked back to the house. Amanda had made breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. We ate in silence at my mother's kitchen table. After breakfast, I showed Benjamin the fence line. "The north pasture fence needs repair," I said. "Posts are rotting. Wire is loose. We'll fix it today." Today I've already been working for 3 hours. Benjamin ranchers work from sunrise to sunset, sometimes longer. You wanted this ranch. This is what it takes to maintain it. We drove out to the north pasture in my mother's old pickup truck, a 1998 Ford F-150 with 200,000 miles on it and a coat of Montana dust an inch thick. Benjamin sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the endless brown grass, the distant mountains, the big empty sky. "Grandma really did all this alone?" he asked quietly. "For 60 years. How much? One day at a time, one fence post at a time. She didn't think about the impossibility of it. She just thought about what needed to be done today." We reached the fence line. I showed him how to dig a post hole, the proper depth, the proper width, how to set a new post, how to string wire tight enough to hold but not so tight it would snap in winter cold. He worked. Slowly, clumsily, but he worked. By noon, his hands were bleeding through the gloves. His designer jeans were ruined with mud and manure. His new boots were already scuffed and dirty. "I can't do this," he said, throwing down the post hole digger. "Mom, I can't. I'm not cut out for this kind of work." I picked up the digger and handed it back to him. "Your grandmother wasn't cut out for it either. She was a school teacher before she married your grandfather. She taught English at the high school in Billings. She read poetry and played piano. Then her husband died and left her with 500 acres and no money and a 10-year-old daughter to raise. She had to learn." "That's different." "How?" "She didn't have a choice." "Neither do you," I said. "Not if you want to be a father worth having." He looked at me, then really looked at me. Something shifted in his expression. "Tell me about the gambling," I said. We sat in the truck bed eating sandwiches Amanda had packed for us. The Montana wind whispered through the grass. A hawk circled overhead hunting. "When did it start?" I asked. Benjamin stared at his half-eaten sandwich. "After Dad died. My husband David had died 4 years ago. Heart attack at 58. Sudden, shocking, devastating. Benjamin had been 28, just starting his career in Seattle. I couldn't sleep," Benjamin continued. "After the funeral, after everything. I'd lie awake at 2 a.m. thinking about mortality. About how Dad was there one day and gone the next. How none of it mattered: his job, his savings, his plans for retirement. All of it just ended." "So you started gambling?" "Started at work. Friday night poker games with guys from the office, just for fun. $20 buy-in. Then I found online poker. Could play at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. Then bigger games. Casinos when I traveled for work. Sports betting, cryptocurrency gambling." His voice was flat, reciting facts like a police report. I kept thinking I'd win it back. Every loss was just temporary. The next hand, the next game, the next bet, that would be the one that changed everything. But it never was. How much do you owe? Silence. A hawk cried overhead. Benjamin. $220,000. My sandwich fell from my numb fingers. What, man? I owe $220,000 to various people. Some of them aren't the kind of people who accept payment plans. Jesus, Benjamin, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for help? Because you'd already lost Dad. His voice cracked. You were drowning in grief. I couldn't be another burden you had to carry, so I tried to handle it myself. By trying to steal your grandmother's ranch. He flinched like I'd hit him. I wasn't stealing. I genuinely thought Grandma had promised it to me. When I was 8, we walked the property line together. She said, "Someday, Benjamin, all of this will be yours." I held on to that, especially after Dad died. I thought if I could just make it to the inheritance, everything would be okay. And when she changed the will, I panicked. He rubbed his face with dirty hands. The people I owe money to, they're not patient. They've been calling, threatening. Amanda's terrified. When Grandma cut me out, I thought I was dead. Literally dead. So you decided to fight it. I decided to survive. He looked at me. I know what I did was wrong. The TSA report, the lies, all of it. I know. But I was desperate, Mom. I didn't know what else to do. I sat there in that truck bed looking at my son, this man I'd raised, who'd somehow become someone I barely recognized. A gambling addict. A liar. Someone who'd file false police reports against his own mother. But also someone in pain. Someone drowning. Someone who'd lost his father and lost his way and didn't know how to ask for help. The people you owe money to, I said carefully. Who are they? Benjamin hesitated. Then Amanda's brothers. What? Amanda's older brothers, Shane and Chase Monroe. They run a lending business. Private loans, high interest rates. My stomach went cold. How high? 20%. They said it was family rates, other people pay 25%. Benjamin, that's loan sharking. That's illegal in most states. I know, but I was desperate. Amanda went to them on my behalf, said her husband needed help. They agreed to loan me money. How much? Started at $80,000 2 years ago. I was supposed to pay it back within a year, but the interest compounded. I borrowed more to cover the interest. Then more. Now it's at $220,000. I closed my eyes. This was worse than I'd thought. They knew about Grandma's ranch, Benjamin continued. Amanda had told them years ago that I stood to inherit. They said, "Don't worry, when your grandmother dies, you'll have millions. You can pay us back then." They encouraged me to keep gambling, said I'd win it back before the inheritance even mattered. They wanted you deeper in debt. Yes, I see that now. But at the time, I thought they were helping. They're family Amanda's brothers. I thought family helped family. Does Amanda know about all of it? Benjamin's silence was answer enough. She knows some of it, he finally said. She knows I borrowed from her brothers. She doesn't know how much, and she doesn't know they encouraged the gambling. You need to tell her. I can't. She's 8 months pregnant. The stress could turn. Benjamin, I grabbed his arm. You can't build a life on lies. Not with a wife, not with a baby coming. You tell her everything or I will. He pulled away from me, jumping down from the truck bed. You don't understand. If I tell her the truth, she'll leave me. I'll lose her and this baby and everything. And if you don't tell her, you'll lose them anyway. Just slower, more painfully. He stood there in the Montana wind shoulders, shaking, crying, 32 years old and crying like a child. I climbed down from the truck and put my arms around him. He collapsed against me, sobbing. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. For everything. The court case, the lies, trying to take the ranch. I'm sorry. I know. I don't know how to fix this. One day at a time, I said. One fence post at a time. Just like Grandma did. We stood there until his crying subsided. Then we got back to work. That evening after dinner, Amanda asked to speak with me privately. Benjamin was upstairs soaking his blistered hands in Epsom salts. We sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. Benjamin told me he told you, Amanda said quietly, about my brothers. Yes. I need to tell you the rest. The part Benjamin doesn't know. I waited. Amanda stared at the mountains, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. I met Benjamin at a real estate conference in Seattle 6 years ago. I was 24, working for a small firm in Spokane. He was charming, funny, kind. We dated for a year before he proposed. I fell in love with him, really genuinely loved him. But when I told my family I was engaged, Shane got interested, started asking questions about Benjamin's last name. Fletcher, isn't that the ranch family in Montana? He looked Benjamin up online, found articles about your mother, about the ranch, about the property value, millions of dollars. My hands went cold. Shane said, "This is perfect. You marry him. When the old lady dies, he inherits. Everyone wins. Family helps family." I told him I wasn't marrying Benjamin for money. I loved him. Shane said that was even better. You love him anyway, so what's the harm in this working out for the whole family? He manipulated you. I was 25, Amanda whispered. I owed Shane $40,000. Student loans he'd paid off for me when I graduated. He said if I married Benjamin, he'd forgive the debt. Consider it a wedding gift. That's extortion. I didn't see it that way then. I genuinely thought I was helping everyone. I'd marry the man I loved. My family would benefit. Benjamin would get his inheritance someday. Everyone would be happy. What changed? Benjamin started gambling, 2 years into our marriage. It got worse after his father died. I panicked, went to Shane for advice. He said he'd help. He'd loan Benjamin money family rates to get him back on his feet. Amanda was crying now silently, tears streaming down her face in the dying Montana sunlight. I didn't know Shane was planning to trap him. I didn't know about the interest rates. I didn't know they'd encourage him to keep gambling so the debt would grow. I didn't know any of it until last month when Chase, my younger brother, got drunk and told me the truth. What truth? That Shane planned this from the beginning. He researched Benjamin before I ever started dating him. Made sure I was at that conference where we met. Shane works in real estate development. He knew about those conferences. He suggested I attend, said it would be good for my career. My voice was barely a whisper. He set you up. He set us both up. Shane saw Benjamin as an investment, a way to get access to your mother's money. The gambling debt was intentional. Keep Benjamin desperate. Keep him borrowing. When Martha died and Benjamin inherited, Shane would collect everything, principal, interest, and probably more. He'd planned to charge 50% interest once Benjamin had the inheritance. Called it success fees. That's criminal racketeering. I know, but Shane is smart. He keeps everything just barely legal. The contracts are written to look like legitimate business loans. The interest rates are technically legal in Nevada where he's based. He's been doing this for years with other people. Why are you telling me this now? Amanda looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Because I can't do it anymore. I can't be part of this. I married Benjamin because I loved him. I still love him. But I can't bring our daughter into this world surrounded by lies and criminals. Even if those criminals are my own brothers. What are you going to do? I don't know. She touched her belly. I just know I can't live this way anymore. We sat in silence as the sun finally disappeared behind the mountains. Stars began to appear in the vast Montana sky. Millions of them, cold and distant and beautiful. Amanda, I said finally, when your daughter is born, I want you to name her Martha. She looked at me surprised. My mother would have loved to meet her great-granddaughter, I continued. She would have loved knowing that new life was coming to this ranch, even after everything Benjamin did, even after all the pain. She would have believed in second chances. Why are you being so kind to us? Amanda whispered. After everything. Because my mother taught me that family is worth fighting for, even when it's hard, even when they don't deserve it. I took her hand. You and Benjamin made mistakes, but you're here now. You're trying. That matters. January 15th, 2025. 1 year exactly after my mother's death. I stood in the hospital in Billings, Montana, holding my granddaughter for the first time. She was 6 hours old, 7 pounds 4 ounces. Perfect. Martha Rose Fletcher, the birth certificate read. Amanda lay exhausted in the hospital bed. Benjamin sat beside her, holding her hand, looking at his daughter with an expression of wonder and terror. She's so small, he whispered. You were smaller, I said. 5 pounds 8 ounces, born 3 weeks early. I thought you'd break if I held you too tight. Did I? Never. You were stronger than you looked. Benjamin had been working at the ranch for 3 months. The transformation wasn't dramatic. He didn't suddenly become a different person. But he was changing. Slowly. One fence post at a time. His hands were calloused now. His soft office body had developed lean muscle from manual labor. He could muck out a stall in 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. He knew every cow by sight. He'd learned to drive the tractor without stalling it. Every Tuesday night he drove to Billings for Gamblers Anonymous meetings. He hadn't gambled once in 3 months. Hadn't even been tempted, he said. Too tired at the end of each day to think about anything except sleep. The debt to Shane and Chase Monroe was still there, $220,000 looming like a thundercloud. But we'd made a plan. Benjamin would pay what he could from his ranch wages. I'd pay the rest slowly over time to keep the Monroe brothers from getting violent. It wasn't ideal, but it was survival. "Mom," Benjamin said, looking up from his daughter, "thank you." "For what?" "For giving me this chance. For not giving up on me." I touched Martha Rose's tiny hand. Her fingers wrapped around mine instinctively. "Your grandmother gave you this chance. I'm just honoring her wishes." "You think she'd be happy about the baby, about me working the ranch?" "I think she'd be proud." 2 weeks after Martha Rose was born, on a cold February evening, 2 black SUVs pulled up the ranch driveway. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Benjamin was in the barn doing evening feeding. Amanda was upstairs with the baby. When I heard the vehicles, I looked out the window and felt my blood run cold. 2 men got out of the first SUV, mid-30s and early 40s, wearing expensive leather jackets despite the Montana cold. The older one had tattoos covering his neck and hands. Prison ink. The younger one moved like a fighter, balanced ready, dangerous. Shane and Chase Monroe. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked out onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind me, protecting what was inside. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The older one, Shane, smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You must be Sarah. Amanda's told us so much about you. And you must be Amanda's brothers. She's mentioned you. We're here to see Benjamin, discuss some business. Benjamin's working. He'll be done in about an hour. We'll wait." Shane started walking toward the barn. I stepped down from the porch, blocking his path. "No, you'll wait here, or you'll leave. Those are your options." Shane stopped, looked at me, really looked, assessing, calculating, trying to figure out if I was a real obstacle or just an old woman playing tough. "Ma'am," he said, smile never wavering, "we drove 6 hours from Seattle. We're going to talk to Benjamin. Either you step aside or what?" My voice was steel. "You'll threaten me on my own property in Montana, where I know every sheriff's deputy in the county and half the state patrol." Chase, the younger brother, shifted his weight. His hand moved toward his jacket. "I wouldn't," I said calmly. "I have security cameras all over this property. They're recording right now. Whatever you're thinking of doing, you'll be on video doing it." This was a lie. I had no security cameras. But they didn't know that. Shane's smile finally faded. "We just want our money, Sarah. Benjamin owes us $220,000. We've been patient. We've given him time, but patience has limits. He's paying you back. At $15 an hour." Shane laughed. "That'll take him years. Then it takes years. We're not waiting years." The barn door opened. Benjamin emerged, saw the SUVs, and stopped dead. Even from 50 yards away, I could see the fear on his face. Shane called out, "Benjamin, good to see you, buddy. We need to talk about our arrangement." Benjamin walked toward us slowly, like a man approaching his own execution. "Benjamin's not your buddy," I said. "He's your victim. You manipulated him into massive debt. You encouraged his gambling addiction. You planned to trap him into lifelong servitude. That ends now." Shane's eyes narrowed. "Careful, old woman. You're making accusations you can't prove." "Can't I?" I pulled out my phone. On the screen was a document, a scanned contract. "This is the loan agreement Benjamin signed. 20% interest. Compound monthly. With a clause requiring full payment upon receipt of inheritance or windfall. You were betting on him inheriting his grandmother's estate. When he didn't, you lost your leverage." "Where did you get that?" Benjamin breathed. "Your filing cabinet in Seattle. Amanda sent it to me last week." Shane's composure cracked slightly. "That's a legal contract, enforceable in Nevada. Montana's usury laws cap interest at 12%. This contract is void here. You have no legal claim. This was partially true. I'd consulted with Philip Garrett about it last week. Montana law was complicated, but there were arguments to be made that the contract was unenforceable. You're playing a dangerous game, Chase said, speaking for the first time. His voice was flat, cold. My brother's been nice so far. I'm not as nice. Is that a threat? I kept my phone raised. Because I'm still recording. Keep talking. The standoff lasted maybe 30 seconds. It felt like 30 minutes. Then a new vehicle appeared down the driveway, a brown sheriff's cruiser with Park County markings. Sheriff Hartley, a man in his 50s who'd known my mother for 20 years, pulled up beside the SUVs. He got out slowly, hand resting casually near his weapon. Sarah, he said, tipping his hat. Everything okay here? These gentlemen were just leaving Robert. Sheriff Hartley looked at Shane and Chase. That right, you boys leaving? We're just visiting family, Shane said, smile returning. Amanda's our sister. Uh-huh. Sheriff Hartley walked closer. License and registration, both vehicles. Is that necessary, officer? We haven't done anything. License, registration, now. While Shane fumbled for documents, Sheriff Hartley spoke quietly to me. Amanda called me 20 minutes ago, said her brothers might show up, said she was scared. You want them gone? Yes. He nodded, walked back to his cruiser, ran the licenses. A few minutes later, he returned. Well, gentlemen, seems there's a warrant out for your arrest in Nevada. Something about an illegal gambling operation. Shane's face went pale. That's a mistake. We're not. Not my concern. Nevada wants to talk to you. I can either take you in now or you can leave Montana immediately and turn yourselves into Nevada authorities within 24 hours. Your choice. Chase looked ready to fight. Shane put a hand on his arm. We're leaving. Smart. Sheriff Hartley watched them get into their SUVs. And gentlemen, if I hear you've been back to this ranch or contacted Benjamin Fletcher in any way, I'm arresting you for harassment and trespassing. Clear. They drove away without answering. Sheriff Hartley turned to me and Benjamin. Amanda did the right thing calling me. She also filed a formal complaint against her brothers for financial coercion. It's on record now. Thank you, Robert. Your mother was a good woman, Sarah. I'm glad to help her family. He tipped his hat again and drove away. Benjamin stood frozen, staring at the empty driveway. They're gone. For now. But they'll be back. They'll know, I said firmly. They won't. Amanda filed a police report. There's a warrant in Nevada. They're done. The debt. We'll handle it. Legally. Properly. But we're not giving money to criminals, Benjamin. He sat down right there on the cold Montana ground and buried his face in his hands. I can't believe this is finally over. It's not over. You still have work to do. You still owe $45,000 in legal fees from the probate case. You still need to prove to me, to Amanda, to your daughter, that you've changed. But the Monroe brothers, they're done. I stood on the porch of Fletcher Ranch on an October morning watching the sun paint the mountains gold. 1 year had passed since the probate hearing, since Benjamin tried to steal my mother's legacy, since everything had fallen apart and slowly, painfully been rebuilt. Benjamin's truck pulled into the driveway, but instead of heading to the barn for morning chores, he parked and walked to the porch. He carried 2 cups of coffee. Morning, Mom. Morning. I took the coffee. He sat beside me. We'd had many mornings like this over the past year, quiet moments before the work began. Father and son, no mother and son finding a way back to each other. Benjamin looked different now, leaner, stronger. The soft Seattle polish had been worn away by a year of Montana work. His hands were permanently calloused. His face had lines from squinting into the sun. I got an offer yesterday, he said. My stomach tightened. What kind of offer, Tall? My old firm in Seattle, senior partner position, $250,000 a year. I kept my face neutral, took a sip of coffee. That's a lot of money. I could pay off the legal fees in a few months, give Amanda and Martha Rose an easy life. What did you tell them? I said no. I looked at him. Why? Benjamin stared out at the ranch, the barn, the pastures, the distant mountains. Because I'm not that person anymore. The one who chased money and shortcuts. Grandma didn't leave me this ranch because I wasn't ready. I didn't deserve it. But now... He paused. Now I'm becoming someone who might. He turned to face me. Mom, I wanted to ask you something. Would you teach me how to really run this place? Not just work here, but understand the business, the planning, the books, everything Grandma knew. I want to learn it. And someday, if I earn it, I want to be the next generation who protects this land. My mother's words echoed in my mind. Sarah will give Benjamin a way back. Partners, I said. 50-50. You'll learn while I handle operations. When you're ready, really ready, it becomes yours. Not because you inherited it, because you earned it. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. You mean it. Your grandmother believed you could change. So do I. You've done the work, Benjamin. You've earned this. We shook hands, then hugged. A real hug. The first in years. Behind us, the ranch house door opened. Amanda emerged carrying Martha Rose. The baby was 9 months old now, crawling everywhere, laughing at everything. Mama, Martha Rose called out, reaching for me. I took her in my arms. She grabbed my nose and giggled. Amanda sat beside Benjamin, her hand finding his. 4 generations. The ranch endured. My mother's gamble, her painful necessary decision to cut Benjamin out of her will, had finally paid off. Not in land or money, but in the man Benjamin had learned to become. Later that afternoon, I drove to the small cemetery where my mother was buried. Under a cottonwood tree with a view of the mountains she'd loved. I stood at her grave and read aloud from her journal. The last entry. If I die tomorrow, I'll die knowing I made the right choice. Sarah earned this ranch, not because she asked for it, but because she showed up, month after month, year after year, just to be with me. That's what inheritance really means. Not money or land, but the transfer of love and attention across generations. Benjamin will be angry when he finds out. I accept that. But maybe if I'm very lucky, he'll learn something from losing what he never appreciated in the first place. I closed the journal. He learned Mom. It took a year. It was hard. But he learned. The Montana wind rustled the cottonwood leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed. Life continuing on the ranch my mother had built. I placed a hand on her gravestone. Thank you for believing in us. Both of us. For knowing that sometimes the hardest love is the truest love. When I walked back to my truck, I saw Benjamin standing by his vehicle in the parking lot. He'd followed me here. Want company? He asked. Always. We walked back to the grave together. Benjamin knelt and placed fresh wildflowers against the stone. I'm sorry, Grandma, he whispered. For everything. For disappointing you. For not understanding what you were trying to teach me. I get it now. I finally get it. He stood wiping his eyes. She's proud of you, I said. How do you know? Because I am, and your grandmother and I always wanted the same things for you. We drove back to the ranch together. Amanda was making dinner. Martha Rose was playing on a blanket in the living room, surrounded by toys. This was my mother's legacy. Not the land or the money or the property, but this family. Forgiveness. Second chances, hard-won redemption. That night after dinner, Benjamin asked if he could read from my mother's journals. I handed them over without hesitation. He stayed up late reading by lamplight, learning about the grandmother he'd lost and the legacy he'd almost destroyed. And in the morning, he showed up at the barn at 5:45 a.m. ready to work. One day at a time, one fence post at a time, just like my mother had taught us.